The social attributes of humans are undoubtedly one of our most obvious characteristics. Let's talk about altruism first. Regarding the difference between humans and other animals, there is a widespread and emotional perception that humans have feelings. Because of these feelings, we can understand the feelings of other members of society. Due to altruistic behavior, we can cooperate better and become a stronger group. Therefore, many people think that human society has obvious altruistic behavior, while other animals act only for their own survival and reproduction. Hence, humans are believed to have a so-called soul and are considered higher beings. This has led to the acceptance of many supernatural concepts regarding the birth of humanity, which most people are still willing to believe. Note that it is a willingness to believe in something so magical. Can this altruistic behavior be forcibly explained from an evolutionary perspective? Actually, rather than explaining altruism, it's better to think carefully about whether true altruism exists. According to the concept of gene return rate mentioned in the previous episode, all biological traits born of mutations that can quickly spread in a population must first benefit the survival and reproduction of the individual. Then, through competition, the individual expands the frequency of this gene in the population. This actually does not conflict with the concept that the unit of evolution is the population. Altruistic behavior is definitely beneficial to the entire population. Members help each other and collectively resist crises, making the group stronger. But consider this: if a completely selfish individual suddenly appears in a population with prevalent altruistic behavior, it would only receive help from the group members without bearing the risk of resisting external threats. Thus, the survival probability of this selfish individual would be greater than those with altruistic behavior, gaining a reproductive advantage. Therefore, altruistic genes would inevitably be replaced by selfish genes. So, an evolutionarily beneficial direction for the entire population does not necessarily continue, because the essence of evolution lies in the individual, not the population. From the perspective of the individual, purely altruistic genes simply wouldn't exist. What appears as altruistic behavior is actually self-interested behavior in disguise. Then how do phenomena like mutual care, empathy, and compassion among social members arise? Due to the reason of gene return rate, altruistic behaviors within kin relationships, like maternal love and filial piety, are easy to understand because they benefit the continuation of genes. However, helping non-family members does not enhance one's gene return rate. But in communal living, we can imagine that purely selfish individuals who cannot resist doing bad things would harm the survival of other members. For instance, if someone constantly steals their neighbor's food or frequently has affairs with others' partners, these seemingly beneficial behaviors could provoke fierce retaliation from the group members. How long could such purely selfish genes last? Therefore, such selfish behavior in communal living might have the opposite effect, disadvantaging one's own survival and reproduction. Communal genes, originally strong within family members, could easily mutate into individuals who harbor similar feelings for others. Such individuals would likely cause fewer disputes and neighborhood conflicts, making cooperation in hunting and fending off external enemies smoother. Thus, these genes would have opportunities to propagate to some extent. Consequently, goodwill gestures intended to please others began to appear. At the same time, due to individual selfishness, acts of goodwill that receive positive feedback, such as gratitude and reciprocation, are reinforced for the sake of self-interest. The brain might mutate to feel pleasure from receiving thanks. Reciprocation and gratitude in turn elicit more future help from group members. This behavior thus has reasons to be reinforced. We can recall that what brings us pleasure is not the act of helping others, but the positive reaction of others to our help. If someone reacts coldly to your help, The emotion generated in your brain would be anger. If one continues to help others despite knowing that acts of goodwill will not receive positive feedback, that would be true altruism. However, this phenomenon does not widely exist because it goes against the logic of natural selection. This is why in our daily lives, any kind of relationship, whether friendship or love, requires mutual effort. Purely giving or purely taking goes against the biological basis of selfish genes. Even many religions that advocate for kindness and selfless dedication promise rewards in the afterlife or another world. Therefore, what appears to be altruistic behavior is actually self-interested behavior. Once related social values are established, charitable acts are also aimed at gaining social recognition, ultimately for self-interested purposes. This is why when some corporate leaders talk to their employees about passion and dedication, it often results in ridicule. Our society is the product of various behavioral gains and competition. It is precisely because the human brain evolved strong social capabilities that humans have formed a vast network of cooperation with self-interest as the ultimate goal. This allows humans to break through their physiological limits and become the most adaptable absolute dominators. Looking back at the beginning of communal living, human running speed was not very fast, and long-distance endurance could not make up for the disadvantage in short-distance acceleration. When humans first came to the grasslands, their position on the food chain should not have been high. Early humans could eat almost all the plants on the grasslands, giving them a unique carbon isotope ratio in their bodies. This special carbon isotope ratio can also be detected in the tooth enamel of saber-toothed tigers and spotted hyenas from the same period. In other words, for millions of years, we were the food of large carnivores. However, as brain capacity significantly increased, the emergence of empathy led human ancestors to consciously cooperate with each other. Before this relationship, when an ape was attacked, other apes would just flee. But after this change, a dangerous encounter for one hominid could result in help from other members, meaning a single human could potentially be supported by a dozen weapon-wielding humans. In fact, creatures like the spotted hyena also have a certain degree of sociality and very strong survival abilities. However, their insufficient brain capacity prevents them from establishing more connections among non-kin individuals and from managing social relationships among more than 10 members. Modern Homo sapiens, on the other hand, can accurately remember and manage relationships with about 150 people cooperating with each other. This is also the root of our modern love for gossip, habitually collecting information about the people around us. Even top scientists in history, during their breaks, likely didn't talk about science. Their topics were more likely about the habits and temperaments of their institute's leaders or which colleagues had promotion opportunities. This is because the brain habitually collects and organizes information about the people around us. Predators on the African savanna, upon seeing one or a few ancient apes, would charge without hesitation. However, if they encountered a large group of 50 or 60 upright humans, they would pretend not to see them because their intelligence also told them the consequences of attacking such a group. They wouldn't scatter like wild abyss. Therefore, large-scale communal living among early humans became very necessary, compensating for individual disadvantage in strength and speed. Such human groups initially should have been like antelopes and wild abyss, chasing after rain and food on the African savanna year after year, while also being subject to natural selection. However, human groups should not have lacked explorers. Due to excellent vision, environmental perception, and the energy advantages of bipedal walking, human individuals could travel further, stepping out of their former comfort zones to explore new habitats, rather than following the same routes. This energy advantage lies in humans knowing they could venture into the nearby desert, explore, and still have the strength to return. This gave them the courage to explore. The positive feedback from exploration also fostered curiosity and the spirit of adventure. For other animals, being too curious and wandering too far might result in starvation in unfamiliar territories. Around 3 million years ago, human groups known as Homo erectus appeared and began to migrate. This wasn't because humans had a realization to conquer the world, but rather to explore better habitats within their activity radius. If a Homo erectus tribe in North Africa migrated 100 kilometers eastward every 40 years, it would take only 10,000 years to reach China. Therefore, 1 million years after the appearance of Homo erectus, the corresponding Yuanmu man appeared in China. Peking man was active between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago. However, it should be noted that according to molecular biologists' DNA analysis, they are not the ancestors of modern Asians. The current global human ancestors are Homo sapiens who were still in Africa 200,000 years ago. Other human species, including the powerful Neanderthals, disappeared during the rapid spread of Homo sapiens across the globe, so it is likely that our ancestors killed them. The latest Peking man fossils have been dated to the time of Homo sapiens expansion. However, some studies have found that a small amount of Peking man and Neanderthal genes also entered the Homo sapiens gene pool, which to some extent shaped the differences between Eastern and Western races. What exactly happened there remains a topic of speculation. Speaking of Neanderthals, this species evolved from Homo erectus who left Africa and came to Europe, adapting to specific environmental conditions. Comparing brain capacities, we can see that contemporary Neanderthals had brain capacities between 1,200 milliliters and 1,750 milliliters, while Homo sapiens had around 1,400 milliliters. This means that most Neanderthals were smarter than us. Researchers also found that their skeletons were more robust, and their physiques were stronger, meaning they were a more robust and intelligent species compared to us. They gradually migrated and were shaped by the environment to become fully adapted to the cold climate, a result of meticulous environmental sculpting. However, brain capacity is just a numerical representation, and strength depends on the functions the brain can achieve. After comparing the specific brain structures, scientists found that Neanderthals had very developed areas responsible for visual processing and reaction speed. One can imagine that individuals or small groups of such humans had strong survival and combat abilities in the cold forests of Europe, relying on strength, insight, and reaction speed to hunt large beasts. However, compared to modern humans, their brains had smaller areas responsible for language communication and interaction. Fossil evidence also shows that Neanderthal tribe numbers did not exceed double digits. According to fossil measurements, people in the same tribe were all relatives, meaning they lived in family units. In contrast, relics from Homo sapiens tribes of the same period indicate that their tribe numbers had reached about 150 people. Homo sapiens tribes migrated out of Africa in large, strengthened groups at a very fast pace. The effects of environmental natural selection were not yet very apparent, so their physiques remained weak. This forced them to rely on collective wisdom and the ability to modify nature to adapt to different environments. Clearly, Homo sapiens were the latest descendants of Homo erectus to leave Africa. The vast savannas and fierce large predators forced their tribe sizes to grow larger, and their interpersonal communication abilities were fully honed over millions of years. The rapid migration of Homo sapiens across the Eurasian continent was likely due to the onset of the Ice Age, changes in monsoon currents, and a drop in global temperatures. Africa became increasingly arid, turning former forests into savannas and then into deserts. Such drastic environmental changes made Africa uninhabitable. However, the Homo sapiens who left Africa did not have time to evolve strong physiques to adapt to the cold environment, so they had to venture into unfamiliar territories and use collective wisdom to adapt. Some anthropologists estimate that during the toughest times, the global population of Homo sapiens might have been less than 10,000. Yet, these few Homo sapiens still managed to bring the spark of evolution to the Eurasian continent. In fact, an individual Homo sapiens was not much better at making tools than a Neanderthal. However, in large groups, once one person had a spark of wisdom and created a revolutionary weapon, it would quickly spread to hundreds of people in the tribe. For example, the atlatl, which could greatly increase throwing distances, became a standard hunting weapon for Homo sapiens in Europe around 100,000 years ago. Meanwhile, most Neanderthals were still using roughly sharpened sticks and spears with stone tips to confront giant beasts. It's possible that some Neanderthals also invented similar tools, but due to a lack of communication, these innovations couldn't spread and were quickly lost. As a result, the tools they used over hundreds of thousands of years showed little change. In contrast, the strong communication skills of Homo sapiens allowed for the exchange of techniques between different tribes and even simple trade. This represents the power of collective wisdom. The large population, technological exchanges, and communication abilities of the tribes hinted at the beginning of a technological explosion. The collective wisdom of Homo sapiens also made them highly adaptable creatures. What followed was a period of Homo sapiens' frenzied global expansion. Homo sapiens, applying collective wisdom, could suddenly invade an ecosystem, become the dominant species, slaughter other creatures, and even wipe out other human species, as if venting the environmental pressures they had endured for millions of years. Sapiens, a brief history of humankind, describes how many originally isolated ecosystems on Earth, such as those in Australia, North America, South America, and many islands like Madagascar and Japan, had evolved independently for tens of millions of years. Humans first arrived in Australia around 45,000 years ago, which coincides with the period when large Australian animals faced mass extinction. Species like the 2-meter-tall giant kangaroo, the marsupial lion, the giant emu, the giant ground sloth, and the diprotodon all disappeared within a few thousand years of human arrival. Various natural environmental factors, such as climate change, cannot explain the concentrated extinction of large terrestrial animals within a single ecosystem. Even attributing it to the Ice Age, which occurs every tens of thousands of years, is insufficient, as these species had survived several ice ages. Therefore, the extinction is blamed on humans. The sea level drop caused by the Ice Age made it possible to cross the ocean to Australia or Madagascar. However, this process likely wasn't a conscious effort by humans to exterminate local species, but rather due to their efficient hunting methods. Clearly, the reproductive rate of these species could not keep pace with the rate at which humans hunted them. Large animals generally have very limited reproductive rates. If a tribe hunted one large animal every 2 months, in about 2,000 years or roughly 100 generations, giant animals like the diprotodon could be driven to extinction. Additionally, using fire to clear land could instantaneously change an ecosystem that had persisted for thousands of years. The entire American continent faced a similar situation. At that time, there was no Bering Strait, and Homo sapiens used collective wisdom to survive the harsh Siberian cold with sewn-together animal skins and snowshoes. Over a few thousand years, they gradually migrated to Alaska, or what is now North America. Even Neanderthals, who lived in Europe, never reached such high latitudes. This migration likely occurred around 16,000 years ago. Of course, the Homo sapiens at that time wouldn't have known they had arrived on a new continent. They only knew that the high-latitude regions had abundant protein and tasty fats. They followed herds of North American bison southward. Within just 1,000 years, humans settled in the central plains of the United States, at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, in the swamps of the Mississippi River, in the deserts of Mexico, in the tropical rainforests of the Amazon, and finally reached the pampas of Argentina. Except for humans, no other animal on Earth has been able to migrate to such vastly different environments in such a short time without changing their genes. Accompanying human colonization of the Americas was the mass extinction of American species. In just over 2,000 years, 72% of North America's large mammals and 83% of South America's large mammals went extinct. This scenario continued to play out on various nearby islands in the Pacific and in some untouched areas of the Eurasian continent. The first deadly wave of Homo sapiens was a catastrophe for the entire animal kingdom. Even before humans entered civilization, Homo sapiens had already caused the extinction of half of the Earth's large mammals. When humans began agricultural production, more species lost their habitats due to land clearing for agriculture. After animals gradually adapted to the environments created by human agricultural production, the pollution from industrial production and the explosion of waste from human population growth caused a catastrophic decline in Earth's biodiversity. It can be said that humans are the most deadly disaster that Earth's biology has ever experienced. Previous mass extinctions in Earth's history occurred over millions of years, but humans achieved the same scale of extinction in less than 30,000 years. Furthermore, this speed is accelerating exponentially, making humans undoubtedly the most lethal species in Earth's history. Well, after 4 episodes, we'll wrap up our discussion on human evolution here. The subsequent history can basically be summarized as the history between humans and the species domesticated by humans. I've also noticed the debates about evolution in previous episodes. In fact, every scientific viewpoint has its debates, such as the existence of supersymmetric particles, the applicability of string theory, the biological basis of consciousness, the origin of cosmic rays, dark matter, dark energy, and whether protons decay. However, these are all repeatedly debated within the scientific community, while Darwin's theory of evolution, or more specifically, the origin of humans, has sparked intense public controversy. You might say that the things I just mentioned are too academic for ordinary people to understand, but do you think evolutionary theory is simple? To truly understand biological evolution, you need to understand the principles of hydrogen bonding at the atomic level. In fact, without hydrogen bonds, water wouldn't be a liquid at the temperatures within Earth's atmosphere, and there would be no source of life. Hydrogen bonds are also the basis for complementary base pairing in DNA. The number of hydrogen bonds determined by the base functional groups carried by nucleotides determines the base pairing method. The information corresponding to different bases in DNA then matches different amino acids through hydrogen bonds. DNA can correspond to amino acids forming peptide chains, which further combine into proteins to form life. This principle applies to everything from bacteria and viruses to towering trees and humans, and errors occur during DNA replication. How do these errors occur? They include mutations, crossovers, radiation principles, and more involving numerous scientific disciplines. These errors, filtered through the natural environment, form the basis of evolutionary theory. To fully understand evolutionary principles, one must learn and memorize a vast amount of knowledge, which contradicts human cognitive habits. For millions of years, humans have learned by summarizing models from observed stories. Therefore, researchers worldwide are remarkable. They tirelessly study, experiment, and observe, turning the question of human origin from a theological or philosophical issue into a concrete mathematical problem, giving research a specific focus rather than vague speculation. However, for those of us with limited knowledge, building cognition through stories is human nature. This nature, though a product of evolution, makes people more likely to accept the idea that we were designed, as this concept is simple and straightforward. It can also highlight human superiority and aligns with the foundational theories of many long-standing religions. This is why the validity of evolutionary theory continues to be endlessly debated among the public. True biologists, on the other hand, use various reasoning and discoveries to refine this theory. Of course, even in the program, HARP sometimes overlooks certain irrationalities in evolutionary theory, such as the issues raised by the Cambrian explosion. This is largely due to my personal biases, as atheism itself is absolute. The core reason for atheism is the pursuit of freedom, the desire to avoid being constrained by absolute authority, and the dislike of others using dubious divine commandments to control oneself. This personal aversion to theism leads to ignoring challenges to evolutionary theory. From an absolutely objective and rational perspective, these issues do exist and need to be taken seriously. Many significant scientific discoveries have been made while addressing these small gaps. However, compared to evolutionary theory, other viewpoints on the origin of species and the birth of humans are limited to creationism or extraterrestrial creation. These ideas are unverifiable, supernatural, and unobservable entities. The principle of parsimony, Occam's razor, suggests that we should not multiply entities unnecessarily. Evolutionary theory, summarized and repeatedly verified by tens of thousands of researchers worldwide, encompasses all of biology, organic chemistry, and atomic physics. Like all scientific theories, it has areas that need improvement, but compared to those concepts imagined by humans, do you still believe in what you want to believe? Only by eliminating emotions, understanding the world from an objective perspective, and applying the spirit of science to the world can we gain power and move towards the future. That's all for this episode. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channel for more exciting content.